The idea, look at Elon Musk, for example. He's now posting about Islamophobia being fiction. This guy who once pretended to be a liberal has gone full hard far right. He's backing a party in Germany, Piers, which is aligned with neo-Nazis who've said outrageous things about Muslims and immigrants and minorities. The German intelligence community believes it's an extremist party. The German courts believe it's an extremist party. Musk is writing articles in German backing them. So this is...
Well, thank you for being here today. We are back on Piers Morgan Uncensored, and he's got a couple of guests today, 3 guests actually. I think we'll only see 2 though in this clip. This is Mehdi Hassan, a Brit of Pakistani origin, if I'm not mistaken. I should have done a bit of research. And he's a lefty, total lefty. He writes for, I don't know who he writes for, but he's a well-known lefty. He's been on Piers Morgan many times and clashed with Piers over many issues. And today, of course, they're still talking about the huge Muslim, grooming gang scandal that has re-erupted in the UK thanks to tweets from Elon Musk. Elon Musk, in a bid, in my opinion, to divert attention away from all the enmity he created amongst MAGA voters over the Christmas holidays, he decided to start tweeting about German politics and UK politics, and it seems to be doing a good job. At least in the UK, it has brought up or resurfaced this horrific scandal. I'm not going to go into the details now. If you're interested, watch some of my other videos for more details about it, but it's absolutely horrific. And the UK establishment are very angry about this, and the whole thing just shines a spotlight on a huge, just how rotten the establishment, not just the politicians, but the media, basically the politicians, especially at national level, but also at local level, and the media are in the UK, how complicit they were in covering up this massive scandal, and just how rotten the whole system is, basically. It's pretty shocking. So it's good that Elon Musk has shown a spotlight on it, even if he's only doing it to divert attention away from his own blunders in the States, in my opinion. And it's causing a lot of heads to explode, causing a lot of seething in the UK. But I think that's a good thing. Reckoning. There must be a reckoning. Those guilty not only of the crimes themselves, but of covering it up must be held accountable. And I know what I would do if I found them guilty, but I won't talk about that here. But they certainly must be held accountable, and they must be made to pay for their crimes. So let's get into this. Piers Morgan talking to Mehdi Hassan.
But you know what? It's interesting you bring religion in. Religion is the most absurd thing of all. Do you think Islam sanctions any of this? These people were plying girls with alcohol and drugs. Last time I checked, alcohol is forbidden in Islam. Even an ignorant person knows that. So any idea that this has anything to do with religion is absolutely absurd and laughable. And again, we don't define white people crimes by Christianity or Judaism. We don't talk about Hindu bankers or Jewish carjackers. I'm not sure why we're bringing religion into this. It's absolutely absurd. And last point on the victims, Piers, I just want to say this, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this point. The victims were overwhelmingly white, right? But they weren't only white. There's this new thing going on that these brown men decided to target white girls because seen as, outside the community and fair game. Not true. If you read Alexis Jay's report on Rotherham, then you'll see that she points out that there were a lot of young Asian girls who were also abused by these men, but who didn't come forward because of, quote unquote, the shame in their community, their parents saying they'll never get...
By the way, for the non-Brits listening, when Brits say Asian, they usually mean South Asian, i.e. from the Indian subcontinent. So Indians or Pakistanis, generally. They don't mean, like Americans typically mean, when they say Asian, they typically think East Asian, like Chinese or Japanese, just so you know.
Married. So there are actually a lot going on here that we've just glossed over. And Elon Musk coming in with his disinformation, his racism, his Islamophobia, championing Tommy Robinson. Surely you would condemn the championing of an Islamophobic, violent bigot like Robinson.
I have done.
And lying that he's in prison because he uncovered this.
Robinson
had nothing to do with this. In fact,
I literally have been doing that for the last week.
Piers, good. And Piers, that Tommy Robinson almost jeopardized a trial against a bunch of brown guys in Huddersfield.
Twice.
With his contempt of court antics.
Twice. He nearly wrecked 2 trials.
He's not a champion of the victims of gangs.
No, he's not. What do you say? I'm genuinely curious what you think of this. I said on X yesterday that Tommy Robinson is, to me, is the embodiment of an Islamophobe. He's Islamophobic. And there's plenty of examples of where his rhetoric, I think, stacks it up.
Well, if you had grown up, if you had lived Tommy Robinson's life, I have a feeling you might be Islamophobic too, Piers Morgan. He grew up in a very rough town. Those of you who know, he grew up in a town called Luton, some ways outside London. And by the way, the same town that Andrew and Tristan Tate moved to with their mother when they moved from America to England when they were kids. So they grew up there too. Very, very rough town. And yeah, tensions between the communities, the ethnic communities, run high there, and probably for good reason. So that's just where he grew up. Tommy Robinson has been through a lot. I think a lot of people might be Islamophobic, so to speak. And it's not even Islamophobic. It's just clear evidence that multiculturalism does not work. It is not a strength. It does not bring us together. It pushes us apart, in fact, is what it does. The world is multicultural, obviously. That is a good thing. The world is a diverse place. But that doesn't mean every community should be a diverse place, right? Because that will, instead of instilling community spirit and community cohesion, groups of disparate ethnic groups of different, groups of different people from disparate ethnic groups will just cause the opposite of cohesion. It'll cause communities to break down, and they'll self-segregate anyway. So what's the point of this multiculturalism if everyone's going to self-segregate and then just be distrustful of each other? There's no point. It shouldn't be happening in the first place.
Which a lot of people, including Gad Saad, who's coming after you, say there's no such thing as Islamophobia. That's the argument that they come up with, which is there is no such thing as Islamophobia, that you're allowed to be as critical as you want of Islam without being accused of being an Islamophobe. What do you say to that?
Can you imagine if I came on your show and said there's no such thing as anti-Semitism, you should be able to be as critical of Judaism as you want? That's an absurd position.
You should be able to be as critical of Judaism as you want. What's wrong with that? You should be able to be as critical of anything as you want, actually, whether it's a religion or a political ideology or the kind of donuts that the bakery down the road sells. It doesn't matter. You're perfectly allowed to be as critical of Islam or Judaism or Christianity or Buddhism or whatever, or of an ethnic group. You're perfectly allowed to be as critical of them as you want. No law against it, at least not in the United States. In plenty of European countries, there are laws against it. So you got to be careful, and you got to be careful what you write on social media, for example, especially in the UK these days.
It's a de facto bigoted position. People say nonsense stuff. You've heard it all, Piers. Oh, it can't be a phobia. That's an irrational fear. That's not what it's like. Well, we have homophobia. We don't say we don't really use it. Am I a fan of the term Islamophobia? No, but anti-Semitism, homophobia, Islamophobia, all these are made-up words to try and describe very real phenomenon, which is anti-Muslim bigotry, hate, discrimination, whatever you want to call it, right? The idea, look at Elon Musk, for example. He's now posting about Islamophobia being fiction. This guy who once pretended to be a liberal has gone full hard far right. He's backing a party in Germany, Piers, which is aligned with neo-Nazis who've said outrageous things about Muslims and immigrants and minorities. The German intelligence community believes it's an extremist party.
Gosh, why would a political party be saying things like that, though? Nobody ever seems to step back and say, well, okay, wow, in Germany, 20% of the people have voted for this super far-right, super extremist political party, the AfD. Yeah, maybe there's a reason for that. It's just because they're all bigots, yeah, and they hate brown people, or they hate, Islam or whatever. Well, maybe it's because they don't recognize their country anymore, because Germany has been turned into non-Germany. Berlin has been turned into a non-German city. Maybe that has something to do with it. But the politicians, and they always dance around this too. The liberal politicians will immediately accuse you of bigotry, of course. So anyone who votes for the AfD in Germany is a bigot, or anybody who supports Tommy Robinson in the UK is a bigot. But on the other hand, the supporters of the AfD or the so-called conservatives in America, it's the same thing. They'll never say, well, yeah, actually, we prefer Germany to remain a European country, specifically a German country. And Germans are Europeans. They're, ethnically, the German people are descended from various European tribes in this part of the world, just like the English are ethnically descended from various tribes who coalesced into an English nationality in that part of the world. And like the Scots, who are Celtic tribes, or, a tribe or Celtic tribes, one or more tribes. And the Welsh, also Celtics. You get the idea, yeah. So, yeah, they should say, yeah, England should remain vast majority English. Vast majority, like 95%, something like that. Of course, there's always going to be minority groups. People move around and stuff, and there's nothing wrong with letting in minority groups. But to maintain, to keep England English, or to keep Germany German, or France French, then you have to accept that the people are, it is the people that make that country. The people are the nation. And people from widely different ethnic groups and cultures, and practicing widely disparate folkways, and having different values, or even if the values are the same, doesn't matter. But the fact is, other people aren't French or German or English. That's just the way it is.
The German courts believe it's an extremist party. Musk is writing articles in German backing them. So this is where we are right now, where the normalization of bigotry and hate against minorities continues apace. And I think, Donald Trump winning is great to fight the woke. It's actually very worrying. We have a global far right. We have Orban. We have Trump. We have in the UK now, I was going to say Farage, but actually it's Tommy Robinson, apparently, that Elon Musk favors, who are being propped up. And they take very, very disturbing views of all this. And Piers, I just want to say this. People think, oh, Islamophobia blown out of proportion, exaggerated by Muslims. Let me just tell you this. In New Zealand, in Christchurch, you remember the 2 mosque attacks in the last Trump presidency, when a far-right attacker in New Zealand went and killed more than 50 Muslims as they prayed. Do you know what he had written on his ammunition, on his bullets? He had "For Rotherham" written on his bullets. Right? That is what happens when you politicize scandals, politicize controversies, turn very real problems into, pawns in your political game, into weapons to attack minorities. What happens is extremists then jump on that. That's what Keir Starmer was talking about.
But of course, these tragedies, like the Christchurch killings he was talking about, or things like that, they wouldn't happen if the original scandal didn't happen in Rotherham, the grooming gang scandal, and that wouldn't have happened if that entire population of people had just never been allowed in the country in the first place. And that's what the conservatives are too scared to say.
There is a far-right bandwagon. In Rotherham, an 81-year-old grandfather, Piers, in 2015, was beaten to death by a gang who shouted "groomer" at him. Right? So I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about this stuff. I'm on your show talking about it. I'm just saying how we talk about it is so important.
Is there also, okay, fair enough, listen, fair enough. Is there also a problem, as the likes of Tommy Robinson have been screaming about now for a long period of time, albeit, in my estimation, purely for his own self-gain, but is there also a genuine problem in the way that Muslims in Britain who've come into the country have assimilated into communities? We have as many Muslims in Britain, I think, as America has, even though they're 5 times the size. Are there legitimate concerns that you might have about the way Muslims have assimilated or not? Is it fair to even ask the question?
Of course it's fair to ask the question, and I've asked the question myself. I've written about multiculturalism and integration and all of these issues for over 20 years, back when I was in the UK for The Guardian, for The New Statesman. Again, it's how you do it, right? It's not my problem with The Telegraph and parts of The Times, and of course the Daily Mail and the Daily Express, is they do it in a jingoistic, belligerent, one-sided manner. I just gave you the example earlier. We talk about rape gangs. Let's talk about rape gangs. You only talk about Pakistani men. Why aren't you talking about the people in Cornwall or the West Midlands or Glasgow? That becomes a problem. I want us to be able to talk about this in a way that is fair and not discriminatory, and not tropes about, oh, brown men are coming here to rape our daughters. That kind of stuff, Piers, I think you would agree is not helpful. Are there issues with integration in places like in some northern towns? Yes. By the way, integration is a two-way street. There's been a lot of white flight from some of those areas. There's been a lot of issues with white working class communities.
Integration is a two-way street. I've heard that also. I've heard that in other places by Brits of of Pakistani origin, I think it was, or maybe Indians. I've heard that said before. It's like, no, it's not a two-way street, actually. But when the you know, the outside group is so big, there's no point even trying to assimilate or integrate or anything like that. A parallel society builds up, which is what has happened.
You know, with those areas, with deindustrialization, with globalization, there's a lot to get through here. It's not an easy topic. And if we're going to make sweeping generalizations about Pakistani men, well, the mayor of London, just elected for a third time, is the child of Pakistani immigrants. Why are we not talking about the success story that is the UK, which has a Muslim man as the first mayor of a major European city? Or in Scotland, where they elected a Muslim man to be the first Muslim British Pakistani descent, Hamza Yusuf, who was...
Oh, Jesus, look him up if you want to be disgusted. Hamza Yusuf, ugh, yeah.
was last year the first Muslim leader of a Western nation, right? There have been huge success stories that we don't talk about.
Mehdi Hasan, good to talk to you, as always. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So, Matthew, you were watching very carefully there, very intently. What do you make of what he said?
Well, I agree to about 60%. You started on woke ideology, and Mehdi seemed to deny that this had overridden and marched through our institutions. I think that's somebody in complete denial.
Yes, I do
Seems
too.
to me very obvious that in the grooming gang scandal, the child rape scandal, there was a liberal bias about prosecuting mainly Pakistani men out of fear of cultural sensitivity. That is a catastrophe for us. You know, I think of academia, where 30 years ago, the number of academics, I think this is a poll in American university, who identified as conservatives in relation to those who identified as liberal, it was 2-1 in favour of liberal. Now it's gone to 10-1. There are some humanities subjects where it's over 100-1. I mean, I took a sabbatical from the Times and Sunday Times to do some research on cousin marriage. I think this is a scandal in this country.
I read your piece on it.
Very high proportion of people having cousin marriage. There are problems with cultural integration because when you marry cousins, you stay within a sequestered group and you don't integrate effectively. Also congenital difficulties because of genetic recessive disorders. I would phone scientists who had written papers. I wouldn't get a call back. They were worried about talking about...
Terrified of putting their...
Because it's predominantly Pakistani community. And there was a piece of evidence in a paper that I found out off the record that showed very high rates of incest.
Oh, yeah. Now we're starting to get into another level of why we don't let in completely incompatible peoples en masse into our countries. This has been known for many, many years. This guy obviously knows about it. And he's mentioned scientists who have studied it. The levels of incest and first cousin marriage in Pakistan itself, and therefore amongst the Pakistani community in the UK here, probably elsewhere too, so the levels of first cousin marriage and incest are off the charts, absolutely insane. And as a result, there's loads and loads of children born with all sorts of nasty genetic disorders, which in turn puts more and more pressure on the National Health Service in the UK, all for something the problem shouldn't even exist. So not only by mass importing people from a wildly incompatible culture and background, not only are you putting social pressure on the local communities where they live, you're putting economic pressure, because of wages and all that. You're putting pressure on the national health system, just pressure on the schools, pressure on everything. And none of that. And for what? And what do you get in return? What do the native English people get in return for all that pressure? Oh, if you turn around and say, well, yeah, but think about it like this, because of these people, we get, something brilliant, we get a lot of money, or we get, a better community, No, all they just do, all the elites tell you is, no, just put up with it, take it. Yeah, there's some problems, but just, get on with it, put up with it. Oh, and by the way, diversity is our strength. No, it's not.
From the UK Biobank in the Pakistani community, tremendously important information for social services and beyond, but it was not published because the ethics committee thought that it might inflame racial tension. Unless people on the left, so-called, are willing to accept woke overreach, they're going to continue to inflame the populist right. And I think that's to the detriment of us all.
Do you feel that Trump's big win, and particularly the role that Elon Musk played in helping him get that big win, which I think is indisputable, do you think that has led, as Trump said, I mean, he used that phrase that was very interesting in his victory speech, about he felt that people came from all parts of every community to vote for him. He won the Latino vote, incredible, massively higher numbers in African-American vote and so on. Jews, Muslims, everyone voted for Trump, more than they had done in 2016 or 2020. Do you think that that was a signal that, yes, they were fed up with the cost of living crisis, yes, they were fed up with illegal immigration and all the issues of that, but that also they're fed up with the woke, as Musk calls it, the woke mind virus? Because I do think that played a big part. When I read about that advert...
Yeah, well, I think that's enough of this video for now, but it's pretty interesting. If you want to see the whole thing, just go to Piers Morgan Uncensored channel. And yeah, this guy, this guest, he pointed out something. He mentioned an issue right at the end there where he said, and all this wokeness, all these, you know, the stifling of science, you know, scientific studies, for example, is just causing people, or the stifling of this horrible, horrific scandal is just causing the rise of the populist right, you know, which is not really a good thing. You know, that's how they all, and Piers Morgan agreed. Well, actually, I think it is a good thing. Actually, the rise of the populist right is very much a good thing, because excuse me, the rise of the populist right is what's hopefully is going to overturn these decades of social engineering, which have caused nothing but mayhem, breakdown of cohesion, dis-civilizational policies which destroy, you know, towns and cities, and just the people's feeling of belonging, you know, create an atomization amongst peoples. So, yeah, in that sense, I'm glad for the overreach of the woke, you know, the woke tards and all that, because it is forcing the rise of a political right. It's creating, there's this like allergic reaction to it. But of course, it would have been better just not to be forced into this position in the first place. Anyway, let me know what you think about all this. I think it is important for many reasons, and not just for the scandal itself. I know I've said that in other videos. I'm going to keep repeating it. This scandal, the cover-up, you know, the scandal, which is not just the crimes themselves, but the cover-up of the crimes, is very big because it touches on the key issues, touches on, you know, political correctness, touches on mass migration and these catastrophic effects it has had on Western societies. After, you know, we are seeing that in real time. Those catastrophic effects are playing out in real time, and that's, for me, that's like the true conversation that has to be had here. So again, let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.